Friends, we are back here again. It's Cyber Monday, and we're going to try find you some fun deals for the Minnesota Twins on the trade market. So, yes, it's Cyber Monday, and we're going to get to work. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. Across the screen from me and back again at it is Mr. Dave Brown at Answer Dave Brown on the Twitter / X machine. How are we doing today, Dave?
Brandon, we're doing great. We're in the middle of Cyber Monday. There's lots of deals to be had. Let's see if we can find some for the Twins.
And I am just wrapping up eating some taquitos, so I'm feeling like a rock star as well. But good to have everybody with us. And again, thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. Again, we'd love to hear you, your comments, questions, and all that fun stuff in the comments, be it on YouTube or on Twitter at Locked On Twins, at Brandon_Warren, at Answer Dave Brown. We would encourage you to be active. Give us a nice review on iTunes if you feel up to it, and thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe, all that good stuff. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And yeah, we'll see if my team wins tonight or if Dave Brown's team wins tonight. Because Dave, you're a Bears fan, aren't you?
Do I have to admit it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a Bears fan. Although I've been latching on to the recent success of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm a fair weather fan when it comes to that, and which is necessary because the Bears don't always give you something to cheer for.
My wild harebrained theory is that the Vikings tricked the Bears into hiring Ryan Poles. They really were like, we really want him bad. And then the Bears were like, well, we'll go get him first. Then the Vikings land Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, who's done a pretty good job. I'm a big Kwesi guy, but not everybody is. So that's the weird thing that I believe. You know, when people ask, what's a conspiracy theory that you actually believe? That's mine. Ryan Poles was an inside job.
Well, I think it is, it's kind of easy to trick the Bears. So I think that's very possible. I don't know if this particular specific trick is what happened, but Ryan Poles as a GM has gotten some mixed results. We'll see he didn't really hire a good coach with Matt Eberflus. He's been just a disaster almost since the beginning. There haven't been too many. It hasn't been 5 years or anything, but in the 2+ years so far, he's been very unimpressive. So, and lots of mixed results in free agency and some pretty good drafts and a couple decent trades and a couple of very questionable ones. So it's a hard time to be a Bears fan. So that's, like I said, that's why if you can, lean on the Chiefs or a good team.
Yeah, well, I've never been able to lean on a good team, but it is what it is. So couple news items that have come across the ticker here in the last day or so. Kenta Maeda landing with the Detroit Tigers and Sonny Gray landing in St. Louis. So let's start with Kenta because Kenta's news broke first. A 2-year deal, $24 million. I believe MLB Trade Rumors was somewhere along the lines of 2 years, 36 projected, which to me was astonishing. Just absolutely bonkers bananas. Good for Kenta for getting multiple years. I can see why the Twins didn't go that route in terms of 12 per year for multiple years. But if there was a 1-year deal with an option, I think I may have at least been somewhat interested. What was your takeaway, though, with Kenta Maeda signing with the Tigers?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of hit on it there. I think that there was an opening for the Twins maybe to I don't know if you'd call it a reunion. I guess he technically left, but to bring him back for maybe a year and an option, but getting those 2 guaranteed years probably, I mean, that's the name of the game sometimes in free agency when you're a team like the Tigers, especially. That's where you have an opportunity to kind of steal a guy from another team. I think, he showed some signs last year that maybe this season was going to be better than the previous one. It didn't necessarily work out that way with results, but you could kind of see where he was getting back to the previous form before his injury. So I think the Lions pay the Lions.
No,
It's wrong animal and wrong sport. Paid a little bit of a premium, but not too much. That's Mike Ilitch from heaven. Scoffs at Junior Ilitch's spending, $24 million, whatever. But I think it's we'll see if it works out. And it's certainly something that the Twins could have afforded to do had they wanted, but they're giving off vibes like they don't really want to afford things like that. So it isn't much of a surprise that they wouldn't match it.
Well, now you've kind of invoked Lions, Tigers, and Bears here all in the first 6 minutes of the program. So we're really running the gamut here, which is exciting.
Let's
to me,
get mauled.
Yeah, exactly right. When I look at the Tigers and to some extent the Cardinals, and you see the money that they handed out, and you say, well, why did they do it if the Twins wouldn't do it? And I don't want to use the phrase desperation, but those are teams who are definitely in a more precarious position starting pitcher wise, especially the Tigers losing Eduardo Rodriguez, almost certainly. I mean, wherever he lands, they have to replace those innings, whether it's with him coming back, whatever. The Twins are not in a position where they have to really feel pressed to sign Sonny Gray at market rate for multiple years, or more than 2 years, as he got 3. But Kenta for 2, same deal there. It'll again underscore the importance that the Twins remain flexible and they're going to have to make moves. But there are a lot of people that are talking out of both sides of the mouth. Oh, I'm ticked they didn't bring these guys back, but it'll be fine if they get someone else. Well, then why waste the energy getting mad? You know what I mean? There's no point in saying, well, they better do this and they better do that. Yeah, they know that. They know they need more pitching. So there's no real point in gathering up the torches and pitchforks on November 27th for an off season that, for all intents and purposes, has at least 2 more full months to go. I don't know if you see that from Twins fans as much as I do, but man, every time even something slightly negative happens, people just go off the rails. Another thing is they had a couple longtime scouts depart, and people were just flipping out over that. And maybe because a certain writer wrote that in the context of cutting costs, like them maybe trading Christian Vasquez. Pretty sure 2 scouts and cutting costs doesn't really go in the same conversation as Christian Vasquez, but I digress. At the end of the day, I'm not that surprised. The Twins fans are upset, but to me, it's so much wasted energy to be mad about something that's just not a big deal.
Well, 2 things for the giving the fans the benefit of the doubt. They're probably thinking about an entire lifetime of being disappointed by a move or a lack of moves that were made by who's ever been in charge of the Twins. It doesn't necessarily reflect on the recent history, but if you look at it for 30 years, 40 years, whatever, maybe they're just kind of expecting the worst. Also, remember, Brandon, when we hear from people, a lot of times it's going to be the people who feel the strongest about something, even if they don't know exactly what that is. So the people who are really emotional about things, you're going to hear from them. So that doesn't necessarily take the temperature of the entire fan base, but the fans who are, given to impulsive responses, that's who you and I are going to hear from on Twitter, people, calling the podcast, whatever. So I think you take it all with a grain of salt or 2. And we can't say for sure that the Twins are screwing up or they're making the wrong moves. It's not unexpected what's happened, really. It would have been nice if they could have signed one of these guys, but we sort of didn't. We didn't think it was going to happen. Now let's wait for those next dominoes to fall before we get a little too hot and bothered about it.
Yeah, no question about that. Let's take a quick second, take a quick pause, And then when we come back, you and I have devised some lists of players who we think the Twins could target on Cyber Monday. We'll have some fun with it. So let's take a quick second. When we come back, we'll do just that. Our friends over at FanDuel are excited for you to know that you can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. I guess it'd be without if you bet on against your team, but I digress. That's $150 though if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, overs, unders, pretty much everything you can imagine. And again, right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Okay, so we are back here. We're into the bullpen. We are talking about players we think the Twins could maybe sneak over and acquire at a reasonable price this offseason via the trade market. We already have seen a trade of this type. Eugenio Suarez, how do you say it?
Eugenio.
It's a lot of different directions. It's kind of like if you have a bouncy ball going in a room and you're trying to catch each syllable. It's Eugenio Suarez.
I'm surprised that the Spanish language would even bother to change Eugene into something. I would go in another direction entirely, but it's what they've done, and we have to live with the consequences.
It's a beautiful language, though, and Eugenio does sound beautiful. But anyhow, so he was flipped to Arizona, who will use him at ostensibly third base. So there are deals to be had. Now, with that said, it can be tricky to find where those will come from. A lot of times it's a surprise because you'll find out a team, maybe they feel good about a kid, and so they trade the veteran ahead of them. Or maybe like the Twins, if they moved Christian Vasquez for a song, that would be another type of player that if there was a different Locked On show saying if Locked On Marlins and Peter Pratt wanted to talk about, we're going to go trade for a catcher because the Marlins need two catchers, really. Christian Vasquez would be their guy. Yeah, we kind of have an idea he's on the block, but if the Twins were to dump him for nothing, I don't know how Twins fans would feel. Maybe they'd feel great. We don't know. All that said, let's talk about position players that we kind of find ourselves thinking about in this regard. Now, the first one that I came up with, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not totally sure. So the Mariners already moved Suarez, but I think
you've already talked yourself out of it, Brandon.
Well, Ty France, right-handed stick, can play some positions. It's like those weird utility guys who don't play short. Like everyone wants a super utility guy, but the ones who don't play short are certainly a lot less attractive. Like if Donovan Solano could play short, he'd probably be starting somewhere rather than signing for $2 to $4 million per year in free agency. The Twins could also just sign Donovan Solano, but if they go the route of a trade, I think Ty France is a sneaky option for them. He's coming off an offensive season where he wasn't as great as you'd hope, and I've been talking about him for a while. Who do you have, though? Who are your position players?
Well, you mentioned the Mariners. Actually, that position players in the Mariners, I kind of have pitchers for the Mariners, so that doesn't work. That transition's trashed, but that's okay. You mentioned the Marlins, and if you want to send them Christian Vasquez, they have a couple guys. It doesn't help your center field situation because I don't think they're going to give up Jazz Chisholm, who's playing center for them now. But if you wanted somebody like Jesus Sanchez, he's a left-handed bat. I know the Twins want to get more right-handed, so that doesn't work entirely. But Jesus Sanchez is only 26. He slugged .450 last year, which is no small feat in that ballpark. That's a guy that you could put out there if you're moving Max somewhere for other
Yep.
stuff. So if Max Kepler is on the other team's radar as far as the Twins go, and you need a right fielder, that's a guy you could put out there, and maybe you make a deal with the catcher situation. So that's one guy for sure. And in my quest to bring out, the best center fielder I see in trade possibilities as far as defense among them is a guy, Ramon Laureano, who played
Okay.
last year, I think, for Cleveland, and has been with the A's, and of course has had he got dinged for steroids a couple years ago. So, but that's a guy who could go get the ball if you're looking for kind of a cheaper center fielder. I don't know if Manuel Margot is still a go for center field, but that's
Right.
another guy that with the Rays that you could trade for, who you could put on a corner in the outfield. If you want to get a guy really cheap, you definitely don't want to put him in center, but we mentioned Sonny Gray going to the Cardinals. Dylan Carlson is a guy who
Mhm.
you could put in left or right field and still seemingly has a lot of upside as a hitter. He has a teammate, Tyler O'Neill, you could put in left or right field. He's got an injury history, but he's already done it. I mean, he's been to the All-Star game before and is a good player. If you want to spend some bucks, you could go to the Mets and get Starling Marte. That's somebody you could put at the top of the order, put him in left or right field. And depending on how much money the Mets absorbed, maybe the return wouldn't be so bad as far as prospects go. Or if you wanted to put some money in that, he's in his mid-30s now, but those are my. And also like Lane Thomas from
Yep.
Washington. Again, probably not a center fielder, although his defensive metrics in center have been better than the ones in right. So that could be a sample size issue. That's another guy. The Nationals seem open for business as far as trading guys who are on the verge of making too much in arbitration. That's another guy maybe that you could get for a brief time, for a year or two, that could fill a hole. So those are my outfield position players.
Okay, so let's walk through the Marte one. I think I like best just because of the caliber of player he is when he's at his best. He gives them elements of things they don't have internally. Right. Although I thought the Marlins idea was a good one. Well, can you run through them again? I want to make sure I have written them down so I can.
Absolutely. As far as center fielders go,
you said Laureano, the Twins. I think the Twins had hoped to claim Laureano, and he didn't get to them in or on waivers. That weird waivers thing where the Guardians claimed like half the league.
Right. They
now
just threw a net out there and grabbed some guys.
And he signed a 1-year deal with the Guardians, basically arbitration eligible. It could be a very similar situation, though, where they want to flip him, much like the Twins are going to hope to do with Kyle Farmer, where it's
right.
A guy's arbitration eligible. He's good enough to not just dump for nothing, but may not fit in your team with the budget, et cetera, et cetera. So Laureano, to me, could be that kind of guy. How much do you want him facing right-handed pitching? How much do you want him playing every single day? Because, I mean, he's been very different players at different points in his career. I feel like there's been times where he's looked like an everyday player, and there's times where he's looked like a fourth outfielder that you probably don't want to pay $5 or $6 million to. But
I don't know if that is an effect of some things that he's tested positive for or what, but
maybe
he's maybe 10% above league average as far as hitters go when you adjust the stats. Oakland, of course, is a tomb for hitters, but he's put up 20 home runs before. He's put up 10 stolen bases before.
Tens of stolen bases.
He's got he's nearly a dozen. And he's got a real good reputation on defense. So he's a better hitter than Michael Tucker. He's a guy that, obviously they're against really tough. Michael Tucker, going back 20 years, Michael Taylor.
I was always more
of Royals, okay? You might get some of these sometimes with me.
I was always more of a Joe Vitiello guy. No, I'm just kidding. Nunnally. John Nunnally was my guy.
Nunnally, yeah. Maybe the Twins can bring in Joe Randa to play the corners.
Yeah. Well, when Corey Koski left, that was the talk, was that they were going to replace him with Joe Randa, and Joe Randa was too expensive for the Minnesota Twins in those days.
Well, that would be a thing that I would get upset about if I heard that. If I were one of the fans who complained to you, I would not be happy there.
Yeah.
So Michael Taylor, Laureano's a better hitter than him. Probably not as good defensively reputation, but still pretty good. And that, so you pinch hit Willie Castro for him. Does that work for you late in the game? Maybe that's what we do. So that would be a guy to play center. These other guys that I've talked about, you wanted to list them all again. Lane Thomas, Manuel Margot, Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson. I mentioned Starling Marte, and on the Marlins, right fielder
Sanchez.
Yes, Jesus Sanchez, who's only 26.
Always good to get a little Jesus in your life too. So,
especially this is the right almost month for that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so.
almost. We're within we're within a month, just not a calendar month. We're within 30 days, so it works for me. Did you have any other position players? I have one more who is an infield type. You did touch on outfielders. Did you have some infielders too?
I did have an infielder. I had Brandon Drury. Is that the guy you were thinking of?
Exactly who I have.
Right. Well, maybe that means it'll happen. And of course, there's Eduardo Escobar, who I always want, but but Brandon Drury was kind of the new name that we hadn't. Maybe you mentioned it before. I hadn't mentioned it before, so I thought I might.
Yeah. The nice thing there, 1 year left on the deal. Twins obviously don't want to be tied up. There are some guys, like if Brandon Drury had gotten a 4-year deal after having a good year, and if the Angels had given him 4 years, like sometimes guys who have pop-up years get those kinds of contracts.
Yeah.
Then the Angels would be motivated sellers and the Twins would not be interested. Now the Angels, they're in transition. We have no idea what they're going to put around Mike Trout, presumably players, but we don't know.
Maybe fans.
I wanted Brandon Drury back. So back when the Twins had initially started talking about trading Brian Dozier, I thought the Diamondbacks were a good fit. I wanted Archie Bradley and Brandon Drury. And so, it could come full circle just, 6-7 years later. I like that idea though. And I don't think it would cost you that much. I believe he's $8.5 million next year. And so, perfect fit. Plays the corners, plays a little bit of second base if you need. Twins already have guys who can't really play second base, so no sense in doubling up on that. But popped 20-some homers last year. The OBP leaves you wanting a little more, but it'd be nice to get a player who, while he's imperfect, is under club control for a year. You have enough infielders to cover you beyond this year, but you need help for just this year. A lot of times when you are limited to 1 year types for help, you end up scouring the bottom of the bin because everybody wants a multi-year deal. Right. So you can kind of flip that on its head by trading. I would imagine somewhere your 12th to 15th best prospect, someone who's going to play in the big leagues, is maybe 50-50 to be an everyday player, a solid player, but not, you're not talking about a top 5 guy in a pretty good system. It's a guy that prospect hounds will know, but won't lose sleep over, I would say.
Well, I don't think, you can't worry about that too much. You have to have faith that you're bringing in enough of these guys to replenish the system. So if you do make a trade, that it won't hurt too much, no matter what happens. So that you're kind of set if things don't necessarily, no matter what happens, because you need to replace those guys anyway. No matter whether you trade them or you bring them up to the majors, that's the kind of thing that a minor league system needs to be replenishing. Drury, you mentioned him, capable of playing a few different positions, a right-handed stick with some power, more than Kyle Farmer, probably less capable of playing shortstop in a pinch, but you could put him at third, you could put him at first, and maybe second base if you had to. And I think he's got a couple innings in the outfield too. That's not ideal, but he's versatile enough, and he does some things that the team, the Twins, lack a little bit that would make them stronger, shore up some weaknesses. He just makes sense in that way.
So what are you thinking on the pitching side? Like where at as far as, they obviously have very specific needs, but I think there's a lot of options.
Yeah, I'd love for the Twins to be able to make some kind of deal for a player like Bryce Miller or
Hmm.
Brian Wu, maybe to
Hmm.
a lesser extent on the Mariners. I think I've mentioned Paul Blackburn before. Different kind of deal. I think it would take Blackburn's further along in his career. A
Yep.
guy like Miller or Wu would cost you something pretty significant from the farm system. But the good news is they're controllable players who have years left to go before you have to worry about losing them or paying too much of a premium. Another player, kind of like Miller, he hasn't flowered, but if you go back to the Marlins, maybe this could be a guy in a Vasquez deal. You get Edward Cabrera, who
Ooh.
has been very talented player, hasn't quite put it all together. You take him from the Marlins, you put him with the Twins. They've had some success with Pablo Lopez, and just to name drop one guy, you bring him in. That's another guy that you could kind of cultivate, and you have fewer guarantees with someone like him, but he's been a little bit inconsistent as a kid, but he's had some really good moments, and that's a guy that you can kind of lean on for a few years. It's not a one and done kind of situation. So those are probably. And as far as relievers go, there's so many of them. One guy I like Kyle Finnegan from Washington. You
Yep.
figure they're going to be in a position to be moving guys. I mentioned Lane Thomas earlier. That's a guy that probably wouldn't cost you too much, but that's the kind of guy you make a trade for, where you don't overpay in free agency for a reliever, but you bring this guy in. He's got back of the bullpen experience with the Nationals. For whatever that's worth for them. But the Twins could use another arm in the bullpen, and he's he doesn't throw a million miles an hour, but he's a guy who can get some people out. So,
What do you think of Hunter Harvey from the Nationals?
I've always liked Hunter Harvey. Hunter, unfortunately, is the unluckiest person in the world. It's just as far as injuries go, it's always something coming up for him. So that's a guy. He's been designated. He's been DFA'd before. So it's not like he's going to cost too much. I mean, I'd like for them to bring him in, but it's not someone that you want to give up too much for.
No.
So
No, but a guy I would look at if he was burning a hole in their pocket.
for sure.
I'm a sucker for guys whose dads used to play in the big leagues. So,
Right.
yeah, you know how it goes. So a couple pitchers I was looking at. I still really like Brady Singer. I think there's another gear there. Have we had this discussion, or did I say it to myself and you weren't on the show yet?
No, he's come up. I don't know how in depth, but we've talked about, or you've mentioned before, that there's more juice in that orange with the.
I think
not that metaphor, but that you use, but it's something like that with him.
So he would be someone that's the prototype for me. I don't know what the prototype is for you necessarily, and I don't know what it is for the Twins necessarily, because the idea that Sonny Gray is already pretty good and you hope he gets better with you. I mean, Sonny was a little on the older side compared to Pablo Lopez, but sometimes it's all about just the best version of the existing you. Like you don't have Pablo Lopez didn't have to become an immensely different pitcher to find another gear. He just, he learned some things about himself. He learned some things about the game, and I'm sure the Twins helped him along the way. If you go get an Edward Cabrera, really that's a bigger hill to climb, but the hill is also higher once you get to the top. So you kind of have to balance, like right now, last year the Twins needed a number 2 starter. If you can gamble on a guy who could be your 5 or your 1, that's where Edward Cabrera comes into play for me. Singer, your ceiling is maybe a 2-3, but you feel pretty confident that he wouldn't be, he could be a number 5 starter on a good team, no question about it,
Right.
in my opinion. So it just comes down to figuring out the range of what you're okay with, especially when you consider what you're going to have to trade, what you have in-house, and all that stuff. And I think that too is why it's so interesting. If you and I have, we didn't consult each other before doing these lists today. We did last time on Black Friday. We talked about it. So I thought it'd be funny to see if there'd be any overlap. There's just so many options out there. There's just so many different ways you can get to, wherever you're going, whether it's making a guy a much better version of himself or finding someone who hasn't been that great, but just needs a tweak or two. So for me, Yeah, Brady Singer is one. One I came across that I really don't know what they're going to do with him. Griffin Canning. Again, I have no idea what the Angels are doing. Sorry, that was a recording from each of the last 10 years. No idea what they're doing. But he looks interesting. If you can get him to quit giving up homers, gives you some help from the left side. I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, and you don't know what the Angels' motivations, intentions are right now. They've blown having Ohtani. They talk about, well, we're going to compete. What does that mean exactly? I don't know. Canning sort of slots in as maybe along with Detmers and Anderson and Sandoval, one of their 4 best starting pitchers. He's a guy who they probably should. I think he's 2 years away from free agency. So he's a little more accomplished than a guy like Edward Cabrera, but I think I don't know if his ceiling is as high as a player like that. But that's a guy who, with a little bit better of an environment, could make the most of himself. Could be the best version of himself. You sort of see with the Angels, like Reed Detmers goes from, he's got a no-hitter. Oh, he's kind of throwing another no-hitter to like, this guy is completely lost in a matter of starts. It seems like
3 2/3, 5 earned and 2 homers.
Yes,
We're
kind of all over the place.
It's against the freaking Royals,
Right. So
sorry. I guess
you're right. He's Canning would be an interesting ad, and one that I don't think would be terribly expensive. But also, I don't know how high that ceiling is either. So,
yeah, no, it's true, and a lot boils down to, okay, you have Pablo, who could probably ascend to one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball theoretically, someone who would start game 1 for you in a postseason series, no questions asked. Then it comes down to how good can Chris Paddock be? How good can Bailey Ober be? How good can Joe Ryan be? We've seen all those guys be pretty good. I think what the Twins need to aim for is that number 2 spot, that Edward Cabrera type, where it's going to cost a little more, but you've got a little more time baked in. If Edward Cabrera comes over and isn't good in year 1, you still have some time to figure some things out. Whereas if you get a guy like Canning and he's bad or hurt, it's over. It's Tyler Mahle 2.0. So, I think there's a lot of fun, different ways. I'd love to hear, too, what people think, commenters and all that stuff, because there's no right or wrong answer. Well, there's probably wrong answers, but the one thing we know for sure is that we're going to have no idea what happens until it happens, because we never see these things come in with this front office.
Yeah, they're pretty good at not showing their cards, until it's time to, call or whatever. I don't know the poker terms like the hip kids, but I was thinking, you mentioned Joe Ryan. I think he is, if the Twins don't make a huge addition, he's definitely. I think there's another gear for him.
Yeah,
his troubles last year went back to that injury that he didn't really report.
Yep.
And if we're looking at another healthy season, I mean, he was off to a great start. I mean, about as good as Lopez at the beginning of the season, and then he kind of went downhill from there. But I think it was injury related. I think there's more there with Joe Ryan than over a full season than he's shown. And you get him. You get Paddock another year removed from his Tommy John. You get Lopez going. That's a pretty good top of a rotation. And I can see if the Twins are coming at it from the standpoint of, well, we're probably going to spend a little less money on payroll. We're not going to make a big splash, but this is what we have already. If the glass is half full, then maybe you're in a position where you can get back to the playoffs, maybe go a little bit deeper this time.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, what'll be fun is seeing what happens and breaking it down with you, Dave. Thank you so much again for hanging out, and for everyone else too. He's answered Dave Brown on Twitter. I'm at Brandon_WARNE. Thanks for hanging out on Locked On Twins, and we'll see you tomorrow night.